Introduce to you a beautiful member of our community. And this woman is someone I connected with this spring, and I have seen her quantum leap in such powerful ways. I'll let her introduce herself, but she's a mom, she's a wife, she's a sales powerhouse. She's a member of our 10K club. We've done some private coaching together. She's also getting certified in our material as well. And so, and I'm going to have her share a bit of her story because it's really beautiful. But Kelsie, do you want to come off mute and introduce yourself and say hi to everyone?
Hello, Elyse. First of all, thank you for having me. This is just every time I come into something like this, I still learn. So,
Mm,
like you said, everyone is always still learning, and it's just so great to be a part of this community. And yeah, just Elyse, as you mentioned, I'm in corporate sales right now. So I work for a private software company out of San Francisco. Met Elyse back in April. So I've been going through a pretty intensive coaching journey over the last year, and I'm excited to share more about that story with you all here. But yeah, it's been just a wild ride going through all of this. It's been so beautiful. So
yeah, it has been, and it's been so inspiring and so beautiful to watch you and what you've done. And I remember a call a couple months ago where it was just like I just kept getting this spotlight download for you, and it was like you were meant to be in the spotlight. You're meant to have your story shared. And so you actually spoke a couple of months ago
yeah,
on one of our calls, so people can go back and kind of watch what you shared there. But you shared another big growth journey with me recently, and I was like, okay, we got to get you back on talking about it. And so
yeah.
Kelsie I'll let her share the details, but she has exponentially increased her income
Mm,
in a pretty short amount of time with this work. So I'll let you speak to that in a minute. But before you do that, do you want to share just a little bit of like where you were before this work,
yeah.
kind of what life was like, what business was like, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. I think it's so important to talk about like the before of this because it really, where I was in the past, prompted my must. It was a shift for me. So just for some background, like I think other people might resonate with this, but I grew up in a house where my dad was the primary breadwinner and he worked really hard. And he also worked really long hours. And I remember him telling me as I grew up that, like, Kelsie, if you just work really hard, everything will come to you. You just got to grind it out. But if you do that, you'll be fine. And so I did just that, Elyse. I mean, for the first 10 years of my career, I worked really hard. I grinded out hours. I made decent money. I climbed the corporate ladder. But on the inside, I was just still really struggling. And I experienced burnout, I experienced anxiety. I had a few panic attacks throughout my career. And I just felt like a little hamster running on a wheel without knowing how to get off. And the pressure mounted for me when I actually became a mama. I became a mom a year and a half ago to a little baby girl. And so when I started thinking about the pressure to perform at the corporate level and at the same time be a mom and wanted to be present and loving with Olive, it was almost like a crushing feeling, a feeling where I was like, how the hell am I going to do all of this? And it actually prompted me to look into coaching. I started working with sales coaches to see if there was a blueprint I could download and just like copy paste onto my life. And that's actually when I met you. I was participating in a mastermind back in April. So just a few, like 6 months ago, right? And that's where you shared something really powerful, Elise, that I wanted to share back with the community. You asked a question. It was more of a statement and then a question behind it, but it was, no one is coming to give you permission to live the life of your wildest dreams. And it's time for each of you to own your greatness and give yourself the permission to live the life worthy of your desires. And yeah, that question just like totally shook me to my core. I think actually a few women were here when you said that. And yeah, from there, it really started to go down a different path. And I'm happy to share like what that journey looked like once I understood what we were potentially playing with. But that's a little bit of the background as to, where I was. And then when I actually met you, and that's when the transformation started to shift.
Yeah, I love that. I love hearing, I mean, our stories are so similar
I
in
know.
so many ways, which is
Yeah.
interesting. Like so many of the things you dealt with, I dealt with before too. So it's always just so interesting to hear the overlap. What was it? So we'll share more of what's happened since then in a minute, but what was it in particular about hearing that, like, what struck you with
Yeah.
that? What
Yeah.
resonated with you when you heard that?
Well, I think the first reaction was like, heck yes, I want to live that life. It was like,
Mhm.
yes, definitely, I want to have this fullest expression of me. But when I asked myself, let's go do it, I kept bumping up against this limit. Like, well, why does it feel so hard? Why is it feeling
Mhm.
impossible for me to have this dream of being a corporate boss and also being a mama? And that's when, Elyse, you also told us about the belief systems and that how you think and your belief about yourself represents 95 to 98% of your results. And I was like, wait, it's not a tactic. It's not a strategy. Like, how is that possible? Because you see, for years, Elyse, I had chased that. What's the tactic? What's the strategy? Give me the formula. I'll figure it out. And then that's how I'll win. And yeah, I learned a lot of great tactics. I learned a lot of great strategies. And as a corporate seller, you want that. You want to have some idea of how the best of the best do it. Wonderful, but I still felt like a fraud. I still felt like my biggest dreams were just, quite frankly, unattainable. And I
Mhm.
was just wildly anxious. So that's when I started to get really curious about this whole tapping into your mindset. I figured, what do I have to lose by playing with this? Like everything else wasn't really getting me where I wanted. And so that's when I started to really evaluate the thoughts and realize that my belief systems were not aligned to the version of the woman who was number one at the leaderboard, making seven figures easily, being a corporate mom and balancing all that time. And so I kind of became like obsessed with evaluating what I call is like the hardest territory I've ever had to manage, which is the one between my two ears. So I shifted almost everything to dissecting how I was thinking and learning how to rewire those thoughts and beliefs to the woman that I desired to be.
Mm, I love that.
Yeah.
So tell everyone, everyone's like, oh, so what's happened? So tell
Yes.
everyone a little bit about what's happened and what shifted for you and any of the results you want to share
Yeah,
for
I
the
mean,
listeners right here.
I would say this on a personal level, my life has gotten so much more rich and full.
Mhm.
My anxiety was probably fluctuating around like a 7 to 8 out of 10, and it's almost non-existent anymore. Which is beautiful because we always want to the success is also there from like a business standpoint, but I would say more importantly, me as a human and as a mama finally feels like at peace. So the peace side of it is really important for me. But in my business, as I started to practice this, I 5x'd my income in under 5 months, which
Mm.
is incredible. I sold over $1 million in 2 quarters. I made my annual number early before the year even closed. And those are just testaments to, me taking a step back, me learning to sell from wholeness. And the results in the business just came so, so easily and without working harder. I actually worked less. I started to play with a 30-hour work week because it was so important to me. It was a must to be spending time with Olive. And I made that happen. So again, like my limiting beliefs came up. Oh, there's no way someone in corporate can play with that and be number one on a leaderboard. You're crazy. That's not possible. Well, I'm doing it.
Mhm. You
So
are.
yeah, it's just those limiting beliefs. I just started to shed them off. And the results personally and professionally have been quite profound. So still just in
Mm.
the very beginning of my journey as well. And I
Yeah.
can't wait to see what comes next.
Oh, it's so good. It's so inspiring. And okay, my voice gets to hold on. It's gonna make it. Um, Here, so of course the financial increase piece is so exciting, right? And I think what's powerful about that is people can grasp it. They're like, wow, like 5x in 5 months, that's huge. And especially the fact that you've done it working fewer hours. And I want to come back to that in a minute. But I want to speak to the feeling state of peace that you
Mm,
shared, which
mm,
sometimes it can be easy to like bypass and be like, oh, it's not that. Really, it was the money, which but it's both. And here's what's so powerful. Anything that you want in your life, for this for everyone listening, anything you want, more money, more abundance, more clients, more experiences. It's actually for the emotion. It's the
mm.
emotional impact that
Yeah.
you think it's going to have when you have it. So that's this whole concept of selling from wholeness, and actually how I know a client is on their way to having a large financial increase in this work is that they feel better before the money comes. This is really, really powerful and important. And you just exemplified wholeness there. It's like that anxiety that was at the 7 or 8 on a regular basis, which I can totally relate to. I don't think I shared this in my story today, but before this journey, like lots of anxiety, panic attacks, same kind of thing. And it's like it doesn't live or exist in
Yeah.
me anymore. So when we learn to rewire our consciousness, right? Because those emotions are coming from limited beliefs and limited thinking, thinking things that aren't actually true about us, thinking thoughts, small thoughts about ourselves, small and wrong thoughts about ourselves that aren't actually true. That's where those emotions are coming from. So when we do this work and we elevate our consciousness, right? And we suddenly start feeling differently. It's almost like even if you hadn't had the 5X, you'd still be like, this is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
But then the money comes on top of it and the results come on top of it, which is so beautiful. Um, I'd love for you to speak a little bit to, I'm going to have you talk more because I can't talk much more.
I got you.
I'd love for you to speak a little bit to working fewer hours and
Mm,
multiplying your income. So you mentioned that you had limiting beliefs about whether that was possible. I know before I had that experience, I did too.
mm,
You and I both know now that the amount of time doesn't really actually have anything to do with it.
yeah.
But how did you overcome those limiting beliefs? And what would you say to someone who is maybe in the same level of consciousness you were in before
Yeah.
that happened?
Yeah, I mean, it was the evolution of things. But the first thing that I started to play with, and you taught me this, but the first thing I started to play with was, is it a universal truth that someone that makes 7 figures and runs a corporate job has to work 40 hours? And I started looking for evidence elsewhere that that was possible. And when I started to ask other top performers in the corporate space, even my other coach, Ian Koniak, was like, "Oh, I played with the 25-hour work week," and I was like, "No way." Okay, so I just had this belief implanted in my mind that like 40 hours was what it was going to take. If you really wanted to take your results to the next level, you had to do 50, 60. I mean, that was just like my inherent belief. But I started questioning that and I started to say, well, what if I'm a woman who can do all of the corporate stuff? And work 30 hours a week. And I started just to play with that identity. And lo and behold, what was interesting about playing with that was that not only did I start to just do it because it became a reality, because it's what I was focusing on, but I also started to get really focused on how I spent my time in my business. So it
Mm,
almost placed a worthiness on like, okay, Kelsie at 7 figures knows the value of her time, wants to work with clients that are the right customer for her that we can help serve. And then all the other stuff was noise, right? So then I could start to focus in on the things that moved the needle for my business, and then also got to play with the time that I wanted to be a mama with. So I think it was about challenging a belief that I had inherited over 10 years of being in corporate, and then started to play with the worthiness. So that that woman who was doing that, I even look to people like you, Elyse, right? Because you don't work, I think, more than 30 hours a week because you're a mama too. So playing with that identity that it was something I could create for myself. And lo and behold, I've been playing with it. So that those 2 months, actually the last quarter that I had my highest earning ever, I was on a 30-hour work week the entire time. So you play with these beliefs and you start just embodying that, and it's so possible. So that would be my one piece of advice: challenge everything you've learned from someone else. See
mm.
if it's serving you, see if it helps you get to your ultimate desire. And if it's not, how can you reshape it to one that